Hi, my name is Gabby Lindblad, and this is my presentation on performance anxiety. So the agenda for this presentation is we're going to start by defining performance anxiety. Then we're going to move into talking about state-like versus trait-like anxieties. Then we're going to look over the psychological and physiological aspects. And lastly, we're going to look at some ways to combat anxiety. So I want to start by defining just anxiety itself. And anxiety is a specific emotion that has been described as an unpleasant feeling of apprehension and distress, and is generally accompanied by an unpleasant physiological response. So performance anxiety is just that anxiety, but it's paired with some type of performance or some competitive event. It could be a test, public speaking, or a sports competition. So first of all, performance anxiety is the most commonly reported condition among all social fears. And I think we can all kind of agree with that. I'm sure most of us, if not all of us, have experienced some sort of performance anxiety. I know I have a really hard time public speaking in front of crowds. And when I get up to public speak, oh my gosh, my heart rate goes up, I get all red, I stumble over my words, and I get sweaty. And even, I'm a competitive swimmer, so I'm at Cal Poly, and still when I get up on the blocks even, I get that same sort of stress and those physiological, aspects, and it can either make me swim well or swim poorly. But I think we all can kind of relate to that. Also, psychologists have figured out that anxiety is both innate and learned. There are three perspectives. So there's the biological perspective, which which says that excessive neurological activity in the area of the brain that is responsible for the emotional arousal causes anxiety. And associated with this, there's low levels of the neurotransmitter GABA. So they say that people with these low levels of GABA tend to have more anxiety and be more stressful people. And then the cognitive and learning perspective kind of say that anxiety is a conditioned response. Maybe when they were younger, they had an experience with some sort of performance, and it was a bad experience. And so when these people revisit, maybe it's a public speaking event, they think of that bad experience, and so now that they always have this anxiety towards public speaking. So it's more of a conditioned response to that same stimulus as when they were younger if they had a bad response. So lastly, anxiety is made up of three realms. There's the somatic, the social cognitive, and the self-confidence realms, and we're going to be talking about those next. So the physiological onset, which triggers activation of the autonomic nervous system, is known as the somatic realm. So basically, when you're going into these situations of high stress that cause anxiety, your body kicks up or activates the fight or flight response, and in doing so releases epinephrine and norepinephrine. So there's again that kind of biological somatic aspect of performance anxiety. The social cognition realm of performance anxiety it looks at the internal thoughts about a situation and the general worry. So worry is the most powerful cognitive component of anxiety. So it's, that thought of what if I don't do well, what if I fail? It's those constant kind of negative thoughts in your head or thoughts of worry, and that causes anxiety. And then the self-confidence realm, which is pretty cool. It just says that, a lot of times if you don't have that self-confidence about performing a activity, or, you don't have that self-confidence in yourself, then you're going to have that anxiety. So it could be that fear of failure, or again, those negative thoughts in your head. For example, if you think, oh, I'm really not that good at public speaking, you have a low self-confidence for it, and thus performance anxiety over it. So there are two types of anxiety. There's state-like and trait-like. So state-like, I like to refer to it as the physical state that you're in. So it's specific and short-term anxiety. It's paired with the autonomic nervous system, and it's state-like anxiety happens when you get the sweaty palms and the high heart rate, those things. So once that stimulus, so whatever it may be, let's say it is public speaking, once that stimulus is taken away, you are no longer feeling stress or feeling that anxiety. So it's how you feel physically in that very moment. It's like, you have some type of stressor. So the trait like anxiety is an indicator in the individual's tendency to interpret ambiguous situations as threatening. So I kind of look at it as like a personality trait. So like eye color is a trait. So it's the trait the individual has in terms of how they're going to respond to certain situations. So if a person has a high level of trait anxiety, they're generally going to have a more intense degree of state anxiety. So, with performance anxiety, it's a psychological issue, and obviously there's going to be some psychological aspects. So again, as we talked about earlier, there's that worry in the person's head, or that feeling of an adequacy, that you're not prepared for this, that you're kind of in over your head. It's that doubt that, what if I don't do well, And it's that fear of failure, and mainly just overanalyzing the whole event that is about to take place. It's, what if this happens? What if that happens? What if I don't do well? Those type of things. And that creates, performance anxiety and anxiety towards that event. Psychologists also say that pressure compromises procedural memory, the ability to make decisions, impairs concentration, and induces forgetfulness. So these are all, cognitive issues that are being compromised due to performance anxiety and that psychological aspect of it. Psychologists say that you need to lose yourself in the game. So if you're constantly thinking about the task that's about to be performed, you're overthinking everything too much. You need to just forget about what might happen and lose yourself in the game. And I mentioned some physiological aspects earlier. When you have performance anxiety, you usually get increased heart rate, increased blood pressure, sweating, stimulation of the metabolism, and a change in muscle tension. And a change in the muscle tension actually can be super detrimental to athletes because it causes lactic acid, and then you don't perform as well. And lastly, in order to cope with performance anxiety, you can practice under stress, do yoga, relaxation and meditation techniques, talk about it to a support system, and even go to a therapist. This concludes my presentation. I hope you learned a little bit about performance anxiety, and thank you for listening.